Hope you're doing well. I know it feels like we got this extended snow day, I guess, for the whole rest of the year. So maybe some of you are excited about that, some of you are not. Regardless, we're going to have some fun here, kind of looking at Shakespeare and enjoying some of this text and really looking at and seeing kind of his wit. So what I want to start off with this week is looking back at the principles and getting that kind of big picture, and then we'll go into kind of more the detailed picture with what you've been working on. So, review of principles 1 through 4, right? First principle, note your history at the bard. Second principle, don't worry about the bard's real life, worry about his words. Third principle, made his mark at a pivotal moment in English history and for all history. Fourth principle, Shakespeare's English is early modern English, not Old English. So all of these, I will tell you, these are things that I've tried to condense over the years of teaching into these kind of principles to try to make them more student friendly, I guess. So review of principles 5 through 8. Fifth principle, it's okay to be confused. Sixth principle, you can understand more than you think. Seventh principle, be humble. Eighth principle, the Elizabethans valued wit. Now, what you will notice is these are going to be probably the more important principles in the even previous slide. Especially we'll practice this. Well, actually, what I did with the first and second draft reading is actually these principles here is what I'm targeting. And so we'll talk more about that as you go through the text. Right. Principle 5 and 6, I want to talk a little bit more specifically about those. Right. Fifth principle, it's okay to be confused. We talked about engaging poetry takes time. We talked about a little bit, right, we don't cultivate listening in normal life, right? We're not used to that kind of slowing down and listening. And the English language has changed, right? So there's a lot of things that are working against us when we're reading Shakespeare, right? It's easy to be confused. It's poetry, right? We're not used to listening like this. And, right, there has been change. Sixth principle, you can understand more than you think. Right? And we looked a little bit about for that, right? You can kind of look at and imagine the different kind of kid approaching Shakespeare, and they can understand more than you think. And even I've seen that in performances. It's surprising how much is actually conveyed and that children are able to pick up, even though they're not able to understand all of the words. So principle 8, wit. Right, we talked about the Elizabethans valuing wit, okay, creating that chain of thoughts. And so how does wit help us with engaging Shakespeare? Let the structured chain of thoughts guide your reading. The thing is, we may not be able to get the chain of thoughts, consequently do not assume Shakespeare's wit is dull. Us modern folks are the dimwits. Okay? So I had that actually happen tonight. I was kind of reading through some of it, and I was like, how did I not see this before with the chain of thoughts? And that's the thing with Shakespeare. This is like a puzzle. Okay? It's not going to be something that's just going to come right away. You have to take time, but once you start to look at the puzzle, you see intricacies. And what you'll see is you might see something now, and then in a year, or 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, right, you see something more. Okay, so principles 9 through 12. Principle 9, Elizabethan's culture, is all about the spoken word. And this is really kind of a building off of the previous one, principle 8. Number 10, Shakespeare as a wordsmith. Number 11, Shakespeare is a great improviser. 12, see beyond Shakespeare, and I'll explain those. What I'm going to focus on for this video, though, is really going to be 9 and 10, because they're going to be most helpful for you with reading Shakespeare. Remember, the goal of these principles is for you to become better at engaging Shakespeare, feel more comfortable, confident. I don't even care. You might go away and you say, I still don't like Shakespeare. That's fine. But if you go away and you're able to engage it in an easier way, and in future classes it becomes something that's not as burdensome, then that's what this is for. So, introduction to Principle 9. Culmination of the previous principles. And, if we ask a deeper question, why do they value it? Why do they assume Shakespeare? Why should we assume Shakespeare's smarter than you, right? Well, Principle 9 is the following. Elizabethans lived in a culture dominated by the spoken word. So they lived in a culture that was defined and dominated. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that exactly means. So Principle 9, let's talk about what it means to be dominated by a spoken word within the Elizabethan culture. Because we have spoken word, oral culture, we talk about first semester with the Greeks. And this is a different type of thing because you do have, right, the ability to have some type of printed text. No, it's still much more of a culture that is similar to the Greeks and similar to ours. And we'll talk about why. So, first one is script limitations. Okay, what do we mean by that? Script limitations, well, having a script, what we think of as a script as a full script, would have been impossible in the time. Reason being, paper was way too expensive. There's no copyright. So if you were as a playwright and you wrote a play and you copied it to your actors, oh goodness, yeah, you'd be considered a moron. The reason being, someone would go ahead and go to a different printer, get that printed, and then they just put a different name on it. No one would know. So, and this actually did happen where you had different people's copyright. So you never give a full script. Never, never, ever, ever, like ever, Taylor Swift, ever would you as a writer want to go ahead and give that out. What you would do instead is you would give a part of the play. Or you'd give, another word for it is a role. Now, I'm playing off the words here, but literally this is actually what it means. Is if you were someone, we say today, oh, I made the cast list, I was given a part. Well, that means you made it into the play. But literally in Shakespeare's time, it means you were given a physical part of the script. Now, you would not be given all the script. You'd only be given your part, which would be your lines, and then a few lines before yours. Normally, it would probably be only one line, what they'd call a cue line. So, big idea here, dominated by the spoken word. You didn't have paper printing like we do. So you had to be able to listen, especially as an actor. So part and role, those are two words that we use today. Right now, role, as in, if you think of someone handing you a physical role, that's what you'd actually be given as a script, just a role of your part. Now, rehearsal process. They would have a continuous cycle of plays within the small town of London. So what that means is, London was really small, so you couldn't do like, oh, we're just going to have, Romeo and Juliet run 14 days in a row. No, there'd be no way because you would not be able to sustain that with such a small town. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to do multiple plays, and you'd have them going over a sequence, and then you would keep adding plays as you go along. Now, the interesting thing is about that, they might rehearse once or twice. So it was very much like you as an actor you have to have your lines down, meaning you have to know your line, but also the line before yours. And don't expect a lot of direction. You're just jumping in. Now, over here, actors are masters of the spoken word. Well, we already spread this one with the cue lines, but they had to work on listening. The other thing is they had no director but a prompter. Prompter would be basically a person with a stick, and why we say he's a conductor. That's more similar, right? If you know kind of more about symphonies or how that's conducted, you're not given the full script, right? You would never be given the score of everyone else's parts, right? That'd be ridiculous, right? And huge, right? You're given, right, the script for, like, let's say, you're playing French horn, right, or whatever. So you're only given a section, and then you have the conductor there, and then he kind of conducts everyone together. Now, interesting thing about this is character development. The words of the character, are all that you can really matter on to build your character. So the actor, master of the spoken word, right? It's not from reading like how we read Shakespeare. What they had to do is they had to look at what does my character say, and how does that, what they speak out loud, reveal who they are. So this is all super fascinating stuff about kind of the culture there of the play and how it developed, but it's all helping us get a clue that, right, this is a little bit of a different world than what we're used to, and they were dominated by the spoken word, and they valued it so much. Now, with that said, okay, Principle 9 leads over to Principle 10. Why do they care about Shakespeare so much? Okay? Well, Shakespeare is their wordsmith, okay? And it was meant to have this more organized, but that's okay. Okay? Shakespeare is a wordsmith, right? A shaper of words through sound and sense. So, how they are defined, right? Their culture, defined by spoken word. So, what do you value? You value someone that can shape words together through how they sound and the sense that they give you. Now, in other words, right, if you think about our time, right, and visual directors or kind of a films and cinematography, right, that's in some ways what we have, right? That medium, right, we're always amazed by it, right? And can you stretch the medium to make that, right? And that's what 1917 is doing today. I mean, it's taking the medium, the visual medium of film, right, and making you and inserting you into this narrative, right, where you're actually, it feels like you're totally completely in it, right? It's not like you're getting all these different, just camera switching around, but you're actually immersed in it, feeling like you were there in World War I, right? So that's the equivalent for their time period. Now, there's multiple ways to do that, and I'm going to talk more about those later, but why do they care about Shakespeare so much? He's their wordsmith. Now, let's get a little practical. Building off of all of these things. So,